Patrone radio program, heard exclusively on News Talk, Saga 960.
And we are back. Kyle Rittenhouse, he's a 17-year-old. A teenager arrested, charged in the shootings in Wisconsin that led to the deaths of 2 people. All of this connected to the aftermath of the shooting of the black man at the hands of police, a man who was shot in the back. Charges against Rittenhouse in Kenosha County include first-degree intentional homicide in the death of Anthony Huber, who was carrying a skateboard when he was gunned down. And this individual, Rittenhouse, being held in Illinois. He's going to be, I guess what they say is moved after an extradition to a request to Kenosha, where this incident took place. And so just an ongoing ramping up of the tensions there. We have Miles Christen on the line. He's coming to us from Wisconsin. Has the situation calmed down at all in Wisconsin, Miles?
The only difference I could see, and I'm not sure about last night, as whether there was rioting or not. But I mean, it's just like this situation is, parts of the situation are so crazy, and it's like without knowing everything, I kind of don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. But I think part of what led to that shooting, and being the second shooting with the militia type, and it's a kid with no military training, no actual training. So to say he was even militia is one thing. I mean, you could make arguments about militia, good or bad, whatever, but this is just some stupid kid that shouldn't have even been, he didn't have a legal right to carry a gun, he shouldn't have been, coming across state lines with a gun, all the sorts of things. But I think one of the things that led to that shooting was apparently there was, the night before, 2 nights before, there had been a car dealership. Basically, all the cars had been blown up, and it looked like there was a confrontation between several militia types carrying guns and protesters at another car lot. But it's a bad situation, and there's definitely a lot of politicians trying to use the situation for their own political gain, and that's really sickening.
Well, it was interesting listening to the president's speech yesterday saying, it's a little late now for Joe Biden to come out and condemn the violence, since they had tried to exploit the violence for political gain. It backfired on them. The polls suggest that Americans are starting to look at the Democrats as kind of encouraging the violence rather than trying to bring it under control. The Democrats clearly thought that this was going to damage Trump and allow them to exploit it in a political sense, which is disgusting enough as it is. And Trump is saying, well, all well and good for you to talk about it now, but it's a little late, Joe Biden. You've blown it. I don't know. Let's hear a little bit from the president's speech yesterday.
Do not see America as the most free, just, and exceptional nation on earth. Instead, they see a wicked nation that must be punished for its sins. And we will also provide tax credits to bring jobs out of China back to America, and we will impose tariffs on any company that leaves America to produce jobs overseas.
As the president was speaking, you could hear the rioting outside in front of Pennsylvania, in front of the White House. I don't know. What did you think of the president's speech yesterday? Miles, was it effective? Did you think he got the point across? He certainly took some shots at Biden. I
was celebrating my birthday yesterday, so I didn't
happy birthday, by the way. It was my brother's birthday as well. So but happy birthday.
Thank you. So I didn't actually listen to the speech yet. I was just starting to listen to it this morning. I did notice. I skimmed through it last night. And I realized his speech was, over an hour long, and it's like, do you think Joe Biden could actually give an hour-long speech? I'd be surprised if he could pull off a 10-minute speech. And
I see Nancy Pelosi coming out and saying no debates between Biden and Trump. I mean, the way I see it is, if Biden is such a big, or if Trump is such a big, fat, easy target because he hasn't done his job, wouldn't you want to debate the guy? Wouldn't you want to get on a national stage, and go after the president over his record? And yet there seems to be very little desire on the part of the Biden camp to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that COVID happened, and then they were able to do the Democratic convention the way they did, well, that really shut down, say, all the Bernie people from contesting Joe Biden being the candidate. Now if they can just find some sort of an excuse to get out of the debate, I mean, Joe Biden wouldn't even be able to really campaign. If he couldn't even really hold large events if this situation wasn't going on. And because of COVID, they're able to get away from actually holding big campaign events. So, I mean, it's just he's not a good candidate, and they really made a huge mistake. And I'm so surprised when you look at the difference between the Democratic National Convention and the Republican National Convention. I mean, while I don't agree with either party necessarily, the production value of the Republican National Convention was like, oh my God, like it looked like professional, whereas the Democratic Convention looked like an awkward, Skype business chat or something,
That was terrible. It was depressing. It wasn't just the technical quality, the content of it. Michelle Obama's bitter speech saying, well, you better, vote for Biden like your life depends on it. If you think things are bad now, and she was referring to the violence, of course, it's going to get a lot worse. It was I want to say a veiled threat, but it was an explicit threat. It's like, didn't you think?
Well, one thing I thought that was very interesting about the Republican National Convention, and I guess I watched a few hours of it this week, was that there was speech after speech by African-American males. And so, the Republican National Convention actually did a lot better job of promoting the opinions of black men in this country, where it was like the Democratic National Convention was like, here's a second here, here's 30 seconds here, here's 30 seconds here, here's 30 seconds here, here's a music video, and the Democratic National Convention, I mean, it was very cringy.
It was a disaster. Miles Kristen joining us from near Madison, Wisconsin. I'll tell you what was powerful is the widow of Captain David Dorn, Ann Dorn, who spoke out yesterday. Now,
I did see that.
Here's a woman whose husband was killed at the hands of protesters, demonstrators, rioters, shot in the streets during a BLM, a Black Lives Matter riot. And she had nothing good to say about BLM. She had nothing good to say about these riots. And it's interesting that we talked about the 17-year-old. He's not found guilty of anything, but it's like these guys are just like live action characters in a video. In a video, let's hear a little bit from Ann Dorn yesterday.
I learned of all this around 4 a.m. when our doorbell rang. The chief of police was standing outside. I wondered why Dave had not answered the door. It wasn't uncommon for him to be up watching TV at this time. I called out to him several times. There was no reply. He just wasn't there. I let in the chief, and fighting back tears, he uttered the words every officer's spouse dreads. I relive that horror in my mind every single day. My hope is that having you relive it with me now will help shake this country from this nightmare we are witnessing in our cities and bring about positive, peaceful change. How do we get to this point where so many young people are callous and indifferent towards human life? This isn't a video game where you can commit mayhem and then just hit reset and bring all the characters back to life. David is never coming back to me. He was murdered by people who didn't know and just didn't care. He would have done anything to help them. Violence and destruction are not legitimate forms of protest. They do not safeguard Black lives. They only destroy them. President Trump understands this, has offered federal help to restore order in our communities. In a time when police departments are short on resources and manpower, we need that help. We should accept that help.
And yet, not all have. In fact, your own governor over there, Governor Evers, has said no, correct? At one point, he said he didn't want the help. The National Guard told Trump to pound sand. Is that correct, or did he change his mind?
I can't comment specifically on that, but, allow people to peacefully protest. I really do think there's a huge difference that the protesters, if they want to organize, peaceful rallies in the daytime, is a much different situation than when you're marching at night. You're marching at night, you're much more likely to have riots and things get out of control. And I think, police shouldn't infringe on anybody's right to peacefully protest. But once there is physical destruction going on in an area, they have pepper spray, they have tear gas, they have, sound weapons, they have large loudspeakers. If they see that destruction is going on in an area, they shouldn't let it continue. They should immediately get involved when there's destruction going on, and they should disperse, and then use the means to non-lethally disperse people from an area. She's very right, and there's so much destruction going on, and there's so much extremes of people hurting each other, and we can't deny that there are racist cops and that there are also good cops, and we have to judge people on an individual level, and bad cops should be held accountable, and the law should apply to everybody, be it that it's a cop who breaks the law or a protester who breaks the law. And also there are some laws, especially one on the war on drugs and things like that need to be re-examined. And there are issues about the courts and things that we need to have deep conversations about. But it's like looking back at Portland, throwing bricks and fire or whatever at a court building is not going to change the laws. What we need are people going to school and becoming lawyers and fighting cases and changing the system from within. You're not going to change the system by blowing up a car dealership.
Absolutely not. All right, Miles. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on the show as always.
Thank you for having me.
Come on next week if you can, if you got time.
Absolutely.
Take a quick time out. And we'll be back with our final scintillating segment of the week after this.
Stream us live at saga960am.ca.